George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Stormy weather, I mean tornado weather in Britain. Scotland is cut off. My necktie was blown out of the window of the car, so I apologise for coming amongst you improperly clad. I've had a stormy weekend. You'll hear more about it in just a few minutes. Great victory for South Africa in the UFC. Dricus du Plessis, a great victory for South Africa. A string of great victories of South Africa. You see how fortune favours the brave and the sun shines on the righteous. Except for in Gaza, where hundreds more of the righteous, men, women, and especially children, have been slaughtered in the last few days. And Donald Trump is on the rampage, and Netanyahu's clearly expecting him. That must be why he's treating sleepy genocide Joe Biden so utterly contemptuously. Fasten your seatbelts on this very windy night in a tornado in Britain. I don't even remember a tornado in Britain, but it's here now. Hurricane Tornado Isha is amongst us. It's going to be a bumpy night. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Seriously, karma is at work. Britain, for all its sins and crimes, has been hit by the first tornado in certainly my living memory. And South Africa, well, it is basking in renewed adulation around the world. And du Plessis' victory in the UFC after the Rugby World Cup, after the triumph at the Hague of the South African legal team, well, South Africa's on a mazy run. If the ANC were not slated to win the upcoming elections in the country, they sure are now. Harold Wilson, after all, got a landslide victory when England last won the World Cup in 1966. He pointed out that the country only won World Cups under him, and turned out he was right until now. It was a very stormy weekend for me in Birmingham. Both me and the unimpeachable Chris Williamson, the MP who in a modern-day Dreyfus affair was kicked out of the Labour Party by the Israel lobby, who then had a tight and tightening grip, no one knew just how tight it would become, on the British Labour Party. He was Jeremy Corbyn's closest ally. He was Jeremy Corbyn's most devoted follower. He was as close to Jeremy Corbyn as it was possible to be. But Jeremy Corbyn was not able, or maybe not willing, to stand up and defend him, and Williamson was thrown under the bus. A few of us have been there and so know what it feels like. But here's the situation. I am a founding member of the Stop the War coalition. I'm talking about more than 20 years ago. I was its leading speaker. Its biggest and most important speaker was the Right Honourable Tony Benn. But because of his age, he didn't quite do the number of public meetings for the Stop the War coalition that I was able to do. Sometimes I was doing 3 in a single day. I toured the country on a bus, talking to uncountable thousands of people on behalf of the Stop the War coalition. I've been a member of the ranks, once small, now vast, of the army of supporters of the Palestinian cause in Britain for more than 50 years. That's 50 years. I was elected 6 times to Parliament. I am, by all accounts, something of a public speaker. But I stood in the crowd at the rally of the Stop the War Coalition and the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and was not allowed to speak, and neither was Chris Williamson. There's been a wildly oscillating series of reasons issued from the organisers because, well, there's quite a bit of interest in what happened in Birmingham yesterday. More than 250,000 people have engaged with my tweet on the issue, which is not even 24 hours old. Nobody can quite understand, either abroad or here in Britain, how someone with that track record could be left in the audience and not invited to make a short address when he had asked to do so. A wildly oscillating set of reasons have been advanced. I'll give you the latest one first. In the last half hour, it turns out that the reason was that I have frequently said here on the mother of all talk shows that the Royal Navy should not be in the Straits of Taiwan, should not be in the South China Sea, should not be in the Red Sea. The Royal Navy can't even defend Britain's borders in the English Channel from Albanian people traffickers making thousands of pounds from people's misery, dangerously ferrying them across the English Channel in small boats. Of course, my attitude to that has been utterly caricatured, but just examine that latest reason for not allowing me to speak for one moment. Does that mean that you don't want the support for Palestine of anybody who doesn't agree with you on every other thing? Does that mean that you don't want the support of Conservatives for Palestine? You don't want Tory MPs to demand ceasefire now? Is that what that means? Is that the position of these two organizations? This policy of an ideological blood test applied to people who want to give support to a single issue campaign, stop the war on the children of Gaza. If you don't pass the ideological blood test, you can go away. We don't want your support. We don't want you to go on a platform and encourage other people who think like you to come on board the demand of ceasefire now in Gaza. That's what that policy means. But of course, that wasn't the only reason that was advanced. It depended on who they were talking to. If they were being lobbied by a feminist woman, then the reason was my immediate and admittedly robust support for Julian Assange when he was facing fake rape allegations in Sweden. In fact, some of the people who were on that platform in Birmingham on Saturday, I shall not name names in the interests of unity in the future, some of them were demanding, including demanding in Parliament from the front bench, that Julian Assange should be extradited to Sweden to face these fake rape allegations. I had no part in that. I instantly saw them as fake rape allegations and gave my immediate and unconditional, total, unrelenting, and now decade-long support to Julian Assange. Others are later to come to that party. If they were talking to a Muslim who was lobbying them, then the reason apparently was my support for Syria in its war against ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the alphabet soup of Islamist extremists. That was the reason why I must not be allowed on the platform. Others said I was too pro-Iran. I was too pro-China. I was too pro-Putin. In fact, one person was told that I was an agent of Vladimir Putin. All these reasons were given to all kinds of different people. Don't worry, lads, we've got a lot of them on tape. Now, quite apart from the mindless sectarianism of all that, quite apart from the utter dishonesty of all that, I'm going to rest my case on the first point that I made. The children in Gaza are dying. They're being slaughtered. We want everybody to support the demand ceasefire now. Whatever their views on the Albanian people traffickers, whatever their views on Putin or China or Iran, we want them to support only one thing: the end of the murder of Palestinian women and children. Any organization, solidarity organization, Stop the War organization, worthy of the name, would put aside all differences, personal, political, ideological, in order to save those children on the screen that you are watching right now. Hundreds of them died in the last 24 hours. Netanyahu is completely open, brazen now with what he is saying. I will never allow a Palestinian state. He's telling all these Western governments that are giving him money, giving him guns, giving him diplomatic cover at the United Nations in relation to the forthcoming verdict of the International Court of Justice. He's telling them there will never be a Palestinian state, and we will not implement any decision of the ICJ in The Hague. And yet, all these Western governments are not only continuing to supply him, the gang, the band is being brought back together. France, Germany, Britain, and America have already declared in advance that they will not be abiding by any adverse decision of the honourable judges in the International Court of Justice either. Is this the rules-based order? You set up an ICJ, you fund it, you send judges to it, but if it dares bring in a verdict against your pet bulldog, your pet savage devil dog, then you'll simply ignore the decision that is made. Is this the Western values that we are told that we stand for? Not only are we ready to fund genocide, arm genocide, proselytize for genocide, give diplomatic cover to genocide, if a court declares that it is genocide, we have decided to ignore the verdict of the court. It's hard to see how much lower we can go with all of this. It's hard to see when you see a general from the Netherlands, from the NATO High Command, tell us that we're going to be at war with Russia within the next 20 years. A war that would end the human race. By definition, any war with Russia will be a nuclear war, and none of us will be left alive. None of our children, none of our grandchildren, no one, nothing, no bird, no bee, no beast, no human, no leaf, no tree will continue to exist on the planet Earth. According to a NATO general, speaking publicly, he says, in the next 20 years. Little Grant Shapps, if that's his name today, the diminutive warrior posing as Britain's defence minister, he went one further in the course of the last 7 days. He said we're going to be at war with Russia, China, Iran, and Uncle Tom Cobley and all. He named 5 wars that we now have to prepare for. And he was begging on television this morning for people to join the armed forces to get killed for Grant Shapps, for Rishi Sunak. I'm not making this up. In his television interviews today, he begged the British public to join up in the armed forces. Well, that's partly because our Royal Navy is held together by glue. That's partly because you could fit the entire British Armed Forces into a single football stadium, all with seats and all with room to swing a cat. But the bigger question is, and I've now been around London last weekend, Birmingham this weekend, how can we afford all these wars? Leave aside the moral arguments about why we should be risking the end of humanity itself. Where's the money coming from? Have you seen the state of Britain? That Scotland can be cut off by adverse weather, no trains, no buses, beyond Preston. How do the Russians manage it? How do the Chinese manage their adverse weather with their super fast high-speed trains? We can't even get a bus from Preston to Scotland. Our country is going to the dogs. It is falling apart at the seams. Our people in this dismal weather are increasingly living dismal and insecure lives. Low wages, high prices, rocketing cost of fuel to heat our homes in this bitter winter. The steel industry. I mean, how are we going to fight all these wars without a steel industry, without a shipbuilding industry? Once we were kings in both fields, now we are nothing. Port Talbot in Wales was just told that the Indian owners of British Steel are closing down and moving their production elsewhere, making 3,000 families destitute in one stroke. So we've no money to save our steel industry. We've no money to keep our old age pensioners warm in the winter time. We've no money to afford a future for our young people, leaving school, leaving universities and colleges increasingly with nowhere meaningful to go to make a living. Our holes are rutted like a bombed runway with potholes that would hide an elephant. Our houses are crumbling. Everything is going to the dogs in Britain. And we have a political class that's never done declaring war. War after war after war after war. Keir Starmer, the so-called Labour leader, is fully behind. He said so. The latest war that we are in the Yemen, again, we've been killing Yemenis for 130 years. Imagine. We've got money to set people on fire in the Red Sea, but we don't have money to warm our own houses. And we're getting ready for war against Russia, or if you believe Shapps, war against a whole range of enemies. Why is it the British way to make as many enemies as it is possible to make? I've only time to deal with one other issue. In the marketplace in Donetsk today, as many as 15 civilians were left lying, bleeding, dead in the snow. As the Ukrainian army, which has been bombing Donetsk since 2014. Yeah? 9 years they've been bombing Donetsk. But this time they're bombing them with guns and weapons that we gave them. No pretense of a military objective. No pretense of a counter-offensive. No legitimate target anywhere near. Just shoppers, ladies with their shopping bags, lying face down, bleeding, dead in the snow. And not a whisper of regret, still less condemnation from the people who are providing the money and providing the hardware. How many billions did your country give little Zelensky to bring misery on his own people and death, destruction, and being maimed in the Russian-speaking people of the east of Ukraine? You need to begin to ask, really. You need to begin to say, we don't want any more wars. We want to stop the war. Palestine, we're in solidarity with Palestine. Oops, I better watch. They'll be inviting me to give a speech on one of their platforms next. Stay tuned, it's going to be the mother of all talk shows.
Mr. President, we got a report of a 50-foot woman marauding through Washington, sir.
Thank you, Captain. But I'm looking for a shorter woman, one who likes to take long strolls in the park and yell at minorities.
She's not looking for a date. She's terrorizing the city.
Is there a difference? A little levity. Call in the military.
We are the military, sir.
Boy, we got here fast. We better do something, right?
Shall I scramble the jets, Mr. President?
No thanks. I'll just take a muffin and some coffee.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now we've got a poll. Should dual citizens serving in the IDF face war crimes charges? Yes or no? Let me finish my peanuts before I continue. You surprised me. Big Basil says the Royal Navy can't even control their own ships. And Mike Lee says, I got to meet George yesterday in Birmingham. He doesn't disappoint. Thank you, Mike. Now, the phone numbers, if you want to comment, if you are in Great Britain or Ireland, it's 08 081 96 5522. That's 08 081 96 5522. If you're in the United States or Canada, it's also toll-free. It's +1 844 944 3344. You can also email the show anytime at onair@moats.tv. If you're in the rest of the world, by the way, you can dial this number, 0044 203 966 2625. Now, one of my very favorite guests. I used to work with her on RT America. She's a good old Texan girl, though she's been around the world ever since those days. Yes, it's Rachel Blevins. Rachel, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Now, there's so much to talk about in the United States. I don't know how we're going to fit it all in, but I'm working on the assumption that Biden's telling the truth when he says he is trying to get Netanyahu to at least bomb the children more quietly, at least pretend that they're trying to avoid civilian casualties. and at least pretend that there might be a Palestinian state over the other end of that rainbow. And Netanyahu is deliberately humiliating him and is waiting for Trump, hoping that Trump, Zion Dawn, will be better for him than Biden. What do you think of that thesis?
I think you've got a good point there. And yeah, it's been really interesting to watch Joe Biden, because obviously any president that comes in the United States, they know that they have to be pro-Israel. We remember when Trump was initially running back in 2016 and he wanted to talk about a two-state solution. And then all of a sudden things got quiet and he came back and he was very pro-Israel after that. So Biden knows that this is the line he has to toe. But the problem here is that Israel has, of course, taken it too far. It's not unusual for them to kill Palestinian civilians. However, it is unusual for them to kill as many Palestinian civilians as they have killed over the last 3 months. And so what has happened is that many in the world, including many here in the United States, are waking up to what Israel is doing, to the fact that they are openly committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. And they're looking at the Biden administration and they're saying, wait a second, where is Israel getting these weapons it's using? Oh, wait a minute, it's coming from the United States, and those weapons are being paid for using my tax dollars while I'm struggling to pay my bills and to keep a roof over my head and provide for my family. Oh, that doesn't quite add up. So yes, exactly as you put it, you've got Biden in a place where he's still very pro-Israel. However, he's kind of telling Netanyahu, hey, just be a little bit quieter about this. Show us that you're killing, a few less civilians. Stop drawing so much attention to yourself. But Netanyahu is rebelling in a very big way, as this week you had Blinken saying, hey, we're talking about a two-state solution. Everything's good. We're trying to keep the region happy. And then you had Netanyahu coming forward the next day and saying, actually, no, we are going to control everything. And I think his use of the term from the river to the sea shows exactly where Netanyahu is standing right now. And he's showing that he feels like he can do whatever he wants. And who's going to stop him? Right now, no one.
If you buy and breed and build a savage dog, you have no way of knowing if it's going to turn on you or turn on your baby, grandson. You've no idea what that savage dog will in the end do. Or a more classical reference, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Not many people read it to the end. When Dr. Frankenstein made a monster, he made a monster that he could no longer control. That's why it's called a monster. That's what we've got here. It is the hyper support. I mean, it really is unprecedentedly hyper, unconditional support Israel has received over 50 years and more from the United States, that has turned this client state into an uncontrollable weapon that is increasingly looking like it's going to hurt the people who made it.
Yeah, it does seem that way. And, it's interesting to see kind of the rhetoric, because obviously, as you pointed out, Trump is very pro-Israel now. He's gone above and beyond. And so the assumption is that if he comes in for a second term, he's going to keep being pro-Israel. But you also have those running for the presidency like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who also very pro-Israel, but he described it as the U.S. having an aircraft carrier in the Middle East. He's saying, hey, we need to support Israel so that we can have some control over the Middle East. But as we're seeing now, Israel is getting many countries in the Middle East to want to turn against it. And so you've seen this monster that the U.S. has created, and they all knew it was coming. Maybe they thought that because they are the ones supplying the weapons and the funding and keeping the Iron Dome running, that surely Netanyahu would respect that. He hasn't on his end, but I also think that he's coming from a position of being this rabid and this outspoken because he knows that that is what his his party wants, and that there are many individuals there who support that. And he also knows at the same time that the second the war ends, he is out of office. And so you've got a situation where you've got Biden struggling to stay in office and complete his first term, let alone run for a second one. And then you've got Netanyahu just trying to stay there. But unfortunately, when it comes down to those who are running for president here in the U.S., they all seem to understand the line that you have to be pro-Israel. And that means, in this case, being pro-genocide, because that is what Israel is supporting.
Now, how is the campaign going? Donald Trump's on the stump. He's giving speeches all over the place. He won the Iowa caucuses by an unprecedented margin. I think he won 89 out of 90 counties in the state of Iowa. No one's ever remotely come close to that record. He won by 30 clear points over not the candidate favoured by the establishment, Nikki Haley, but over Ron DeSantis, that many people thought was running out of steam. How is it going, first of all, on the Republican side? And then what kind of campaign do you think Joe Biden is going to run?
Well, when it comes to the Republican side, you're right. I mean, Trump has been far above in the polls the entire time, and now we're kind of seeing that become reality as we had the Iowa caucuses last week, and then we've got the New Hampshire primary coming up this week on Tuesday. So we're really getting into it. It's been interesting to watch as Trump has really proven no matter what they throw at him, it almost makes him more popular. Another criminal trial, another civil trial, it all adds to his popularity because the American people want to see someone as anti-establishment. They want to see someone that is actually going to drain the swamp. Now, do I think that Trump is going to come back in and do that in a second term? Personally, I don't have much hope for it. But he is very good at campaigning. He's good at making it look like he is going to take on the establishment. And right now, the establishment is the Biden administration, and they are doing everything they can to go after their top opponent. And that, of course, is not boding well for them. When it comes to Nikki Haley, she is the establishment personified. And so she's got those big money donors from the people who really don't want to support Trump. So instead they're saying, oh, we'll support Nikki Haley. Now, of course, Nikki Haley is one of those who would get into office and take us to World War III in some form. Biden's gotten us close, but I feel like Nikki's one of those, she would push us right over the edge if she could. It's been interesting to watch Ron DeSantis because I know he was very popular back during the pandemic, and again looking like he was calling out the establishment on his end. But because he's supported by a lot of people who also support Trump, they've kind of looked at him and said, next time around, come back in 4 years or 8 years. Now, when it comes to the Democrats, what's been really interesting to watch is that they have basically said, we don't need a primary, we don't need a contest, we have a sitting president, he can run again for a second term, don't worry about it. But the problem, of course, is that their candidate is Joe Biden, who increasingly has those kind of Biden moments where you look at him saying something and then the White House has to come out and explain over it and say, oh, well, he didn't really mean that. So what's going to be interesting to watch is if Biden comes out in the next few months and says, hey, I have, insert health issue here. I've decided that I'm not going to run. And then to see who the DNC puts in his place, because that won't be the Democratic voters getting to decide who their candidate is. That will be them once again being told who their candidate is, which is exactly what we saw with Hillary Clinton, exactly what we saw with Joe Biden, and why so many in that party are starting to feel disenfranchised because they simply are not getting a choice of who their representative is.
So you've still got doubts that it will be Biden on the ballot?
I do. I'm very curious to see if they're going to try to throw in a Gavin Newsom or if they're going to just milk it for all that it's worth with Biden and get him as far as they can. Now, it could be one of those cases where he's the Democratic nominee, gets all the way through. I don't see him winning the election if it's completely fair and clean, but there's also the concern about Kamala Harris being his vice president, the fact that if she has to take over at any point, it is not going to be good, as we've seen from just about any time she has a public appearance.
Speaking of fair and clean, the prosecutor in Georgia that secured a conviction, I think, against Donald Trump, or certainly brought the case, might still be under judgment, I don't recall. She's now been exposed as having a long adulterous affair on the public dime. She's now facing charges in her own courts for financial malfeasance spent during a secret affair with one of her own prosecutorial staff. Fanny is her name. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm not in the legal realm, but if I was going to bring a case against, say, the former sitting president and 18 other co-defendants, I would be making sure that I was doing everything so clean and so proper that no one could ever question it. But apparently in Georgia, that is not what happened. You've got the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis. She comes in, she brings this massive case saying that Trump and over a dozen other co-defendants, that they tried to interfere with the results of the 2020 election. Now, she brings it under racketeering charges, which a lot of people have questioned that already, why you would go that route. But nevertheless, she does. And then one of those co-defendants, his attorney's looking into it, and she finds that, wait a second, Fani Willis has been called to testify in a divorce hearing. That divorce hearing involves Nathan Wade. Nathan Wade is the lead prosecutor that Fani Willis has hired to be on this case targeting Trump and all of these other defendants. Oh, and Nathan Wade was also paid around $600,000 for this job, despite the fact that he has no experience whatsoever in order to do it, and he was paid nearly $500,000 more than the other two prosecutors that were put on the case. Oh, and there's even more, because Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, allegedly, have gone on all of these different vacations since he got that $600,000. So they've gone on cruises, they've gone to the Bahamas, they've been just living their life all out in the public, thinking that no one would notice. And maybe if this was some random case in some small town in middle America, people may not notice. But this is a case involving the former sitting president who is running for election again. And I don't know how these people can be this stupid and reckless, but yet we're finding out about all of it now.
Banana Republic, that is for sure. Rachel, tell people how they can follow your work. Alas, we can't see you on RT America now because they closed it. But people, I know a lot of our viewers like to keep up with your work. How should they do that?
You can follow me on YouTube, which is just under Rachel Blevins, or on X or Twitter, which is on Rach Blevins. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Fabulous to see you again. Thank you very much, Rachel Blevins, for coming on, the mother of all talk shows. Should dual citizens serving in the IDF face war crimes charges? It's a bit of a no-brainer, that. If a Muslim in East London went out to fight in some cause that appealed to him, say in Gaza, when he came back, he would definitely be arrested. But the Israeli soldiers involved in alleged genocide are coming back to Britain and resuming their jobs. Some of them are police officers. Some of them are bank managers. They've just been out in Gaza killing people, killing children by the thousand. More than 10,000 children have been killed. And they come back as if nothing had happened. What is it with British law? I don't know about American law. It might be more difficult there. But on the face of it, British law is clear that you're not allowed to go and fight in another country's army when you're a British citizen. So should these dual citizens serving in the IDF face war crimes charges? You can vote on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my Twitter, my X. You can vote on the YouTube community poll, and you can vote on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook or any platform that allows you to share, please do share the program now with all of your contexts. The number of votes cast so far, 24,094. You've still got a good hour and a bit still to get your vote in, but make sure you do. Should dual citizens serving in the IDF face war crimes charges? Yes or no? Let me take a quick break, and then it's your calls.
There's a group of people in Twitter who are daily posting discussions about Gaza, Lebanon, what's happening, news updates, aid for Gaza, and trying to enlist the help of Jordan and France and any other regional entity that will help get more aid into Gaza and all of Palestine for everyone who suffers. So I want to request that everyone who is listening to this go to your local council meetings and peacefully request that their representatives at the local levels do this, because it works.
Thanks for the call, Pia, in Uruguay. I'm a free man of the city of San Francisco, awarded to me for my work on Palestine, on the steps of City Hall itself. So it was a particular delight for me that the San Francisco Council voted by 8 votes to 3 to demand a ceasefire. And that decision didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of campaigning to force the local authority representatives to vote.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
So, if you're in Britain or Ireland, 08081965522, that's the number to call. It's free. If you're in the US or Canada, it's also toll-free. It's +1 844 944 3344. And if you're in the rest of the world, 0044 203 966 2625. Some comments. Joan Heng Chin says, have you all seen The Little Princess in the Gaza? May those that support what was done to her rot in hell. And Forrest 1989 says, British IDF recruit boasted on TikTok that he got a Gazan woman to leave her flat under threat of death, then went through her underwear, called her a slut, and blew up her apartment. He is back in the UK. And Ray Hall says China has built 35,000 kilometres of high-speed railway in 10 years. We can't even manage 200 miles to Birmingham. And Thomas Randall says, let's hope the guidance system of our nuclear weapons is not made by Fujitsu. And Alpaca My Bag says, did you know peanuts aren't actually nuts? They're legumes. That's almost a philosophical question, for which I'm deeply grateful. Christina is in Germany on Julian Assange. Let's hear from her. Christina, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, here I am. Please help me a little bit with the language, because my English is not the best. So
don't worry, you're doing well so far.
And I'm not very, I don't know what to do now. Ask me.
What do you want to say about Julian? Just speak up.
Well, I'm concerned with Julian's case more than 4 years, and we are doing weekly vigils in Baden-Baden, Germany, for his freedom. And now you certainly know that on February 20th, 21st, there will be the last High Court hearing in his case. And we are very afraid of the result of that, and we are afraid that he will die in prison, having nothing done but published the truth. That's the problem.
Yes, I'm of course involved in this case from day one. It's a very real fear that you have, a very well justified one. I believe that British judges are the least corrupted institution in Britain, but that doesn't mean they're not corrupt. They're not as corrupt as the Parliament, as the media, as some of the police forces are, but they are clearly still open to pressure from the government, even from a foreign government like the United States. So there is cause for concern, cause for fear that Julian will be sent to the United States. I had hoped, still hope, that one of Biden's election campaign wheezes to please libertarian people, to please some liberal people, would be to drop the charges against Julian, obviating the need for these British judges to take a stand. It's the end of the road at the third week in February. Julian will be off forever. We'll never see him again. We'll never see his face. We'll never hear his voice. We'll never read another word that he has written if this judgment goes the wrong way. So everyone is being encouraged, and will certainly advertise it relentlessly here, to be there outside the court on the day, so that it's evident that a great number of people, to say the least, in Britain, including some who previously were not on board, and that's after all the point of a campaign, to persuade people that you haven't yet persuaded, that they should be there in the Strand outside the High Courts of Justice. We're worried about it just as much as you are, Christina. Maybe even more, because this will be yet another indelible mark of shame on Britain if we capitulate to the extradition of Julian Assange. Kate is in Washington. Let's hear from her on Palestine. Go ahead, Kate.
Hi, George. God, I love you so much. I'd like to introduce you and your audience to a Palestinian named Mahmoud. It's Mahmood. And then if you put space OD, he's on YouTube. Mahmoud OD. He's got amazing sources and daily updates with completely new information that's not available anywhere else.
And is he in Palestine right now?
He is in London right now. He's in your neck of the woods, and I would love it if you would contact him through his information. He's got his direct email address. You can find it through going to the YouTube channel and getting the address from that. And he's
we'll definitely do that, Kate. Yeah, tell us more.
Yeah, he's very sure Palestine is actually winning the struggle, and he has many sound reasons to back it up. And like, for instance, he actually drew diagrams and talked about why the tunnels, for instance, this was a while back, could not be flooded. The Palestinian engineers expected Israel to try that. And so right from the get-go, they were made so that they could not be flooded. So all of that was bullshit. Was not real. I'd like to add, the more I know about the Palestinians, the more I'm in awe of them. They are the finest example of humanity I know of.
Well, I think many of us shared that view. It wasn't their choice that it should be so. They didn't choose for their country to be colonized by European settlers. They did not choose the religion of the European settlers that colonized them. All they knew was that people came from Europe and took their land, took their houses, drove them out of their own country, and in an uncountable number of cases, killed them. And because they refused to accept this, as any self-respecting person, if you think about it, would do, if someone came to your house and took it over, allowed you to live in the back garden in a tent, but periodically bombed that tent, or drove you out of the garden periodically into neighbouring gardens nearby, if your children were born as refugees outside or displaced people inside, while someone else enjoyed your house, someone else enjoyed your garden, its flowers, its fruits, and so on, you'd be pretty sore about it. And you'd probably, faced with such a sea of troubles, take up arms and, by opposing, seek to end them. That's all that the Palestinians have done. And they're the only legal actors in this whole picture. They're the only people with the law, international law, on their side. They have a legal right, one would argue a moral obligation, but definitely a legal right to take up arms and resist people who have illegally occupied their country for well over half a century in many cases. Kate, thanks for that call. Rash Latif says we got to have solidarity amongst ourselves. We can have difference in opinions. On the topic, is Palestine stick together? And Claude Me says, months ago I remember George insisting that America runs the USA and not the other way around. Is George still of that view? I don't see how one could be. I absolutely believe that Israel is a creature of empire. First the British Empire and now the American Empire. Robert Kennedy is right when he says that Israel is our unsinkable aircraft carrier in the middle of the Arab world. But that doesn't mean, and I've never said otherwise, that there is not, I was going to call it unhealthy, but that seriously understates it, that there is not a deeply sick problem in American democracy that people whose only interest is the interest of Israel are able to, by one means or another, persuade U.S. lawmakers to forfeit America's own interests in favor of their client state. But there's still a client state. Let me put it, if you like, as bluntly as I can. If Joe Biden turned off the money tomorrow, if he turned off the weapons tomorrow, if he voted at the Security Council of the United Nations tomorrow in a totally different way than the way that the US has done for as long as I've been involved in this issue, which is over 50 years, it would make the situation of the state of Israel untenable. So the US has the power. It has the power to stop this, but it will not use it. And in an election year, Biden is absolutely terrified of which way the chips would fall if he were to come out of the closet and state publicly that this cannot go on any longer and that it must stop right now, and no more money and no more weapons and no more protection in the international arena will be afforded to Netanyahu. Netanyahu would fall the next day. Thanks anyway for the question. Declan is in Dublin on the Birmingham protest. Go ahead, Declan.
Right, George. I listened to you there speak quite passionately about Birmingham, and I had no intention of attending that march because I'm in Dublin. However, in favour of you, there's a couple of things about yourself you didn't mention, and one of them is that you brought a huge convoy to Gaza. That's part of your resume. There's the Mariam appeal, and there's also when you wiped the floor on Capitol Hill. Now, those three things, plus your former involvement in the Stop the War movement, would, I imagine, put you on a short list of speakers. Apparently not. Now, if we look who, I don't know who spoke in Birmingham, but if as your program was proceeding, I checked in on Stop the War, and I wonder today where the Stop the War movement stand on Syria, because it's not on Syria but on Ukraine, because they seem to have got that one totally wrong. Their finest hour was when, and I think you were involved, they stopped the RAF bombing Damascus, but not just the Stop the War movement, but the ordinary English person now who marched in very big and very impressive numbers. Now, the last few days in Birmingham and other countries, young English girls, and I include young Muslim girls in that, were reading poems and giving it their best shot to help the Palestinians. And the question is, for them, for Stop the War, would you have been an asset or a liability? And many people would say you would be an asset. However, with the Stop the War and over your programs over the last couple of years, you have drawn attention to how their balloon has been deflated quite a lot. And if you go back to Syria, where I had some involvement, they actually wouldn't allow a nun based in Syria to speak at their meeting, and they allowed a so-called member of the Labour Party, not the brightest tool in the cabinet, and Jeremy Scahill from America to speak, who I'd say are just sensationalists. I certainly wouldn't want them. I don't think they'd contribute to any political party, now to any political movement. So the Stop the War chappies have a couple of very serious questions to ask themselves. And also here on this little island, I was looking at Wes Streeting, or whatever that fella's name is, in the British Labour Party, and he was, when people tried to corner him, he goes on about the two-state solution, and he doesn't believe any of that. The way I see it, in England, in France, where newly appointed members of the cabinet with some colourful personal histories, in Ireland, Sweden, Holland and Germany and other places, we're like the Mamluks in Egypt, where the Ottomans, read America, has put all these half-wits in charge of us, and however they manage it, they seem to keep the whole of Western Europe as emasculated, as powerless, and ultimately as contemptible as the Mamluks were. So that's my point,
yeah,
George.
very, very powerful. Thank you for the kind things that you said. If any or all of the reasons that were variously offered for leaving me standing in front of the stage, unable to deliver my speech, if any or all of them were justification, and none of them are, then why was Chris Williamson banned? Chris Williamson has never said a thing about the Albanian people trafficking. He's got nothing whatsoever to do with Vladimir Putin or with China. So why was he banned from speaking? And the answer is this, that from the beginning, and I should know, I was one of the founders, the Stop the War Coalition was controlled by a very small group of Trotskyites of different stripes, and stripes which have changed as of necessity, as they were expelled, as Trotskyites do, from their various factions. And these people maintain an ironclad control over an organization that should be as wide as it's possible to be. The point I made earlier, if a Tory MP from the governing party had turned up to give his support to the demand to cease fire in Gaza, are you really saying that because of his views on X, Y, and Z, you would not allow him to do so? Because that's the logic of your position, and it would render you null and void as an anti-war coalition or as a Palestine solidarity campaign, because it would say that you only want people who agree with you on all other matters and have agreed with you at all other times. And therefore, you are not seriously trying to get a ceasefire in Gaza. You're using Gaza. You're using these dead children for your own ultra-left Trotskyite projects. It's plural because their projects are not quite what they are and what they were. Declan in Dublin. Thanks, you've got my blood boiling all over again. Cora is in Brighton on Julian Assange and war. Let's hear from her. Cora, welcome.
Hi, George. Hi, thanks for having me on. Just to continue what you were saying about if you don't agree with everything that I'm saying, you're banned. These rape charges that were brought against Julian were designed to split us all up so that the majority of, sane people didn't get behind the movement to say, not in my name. Julian's told me what's done in my name, and why aren't I allowed to know what's done in my name? This has made, sorry to copy you, but it's made my blood boil from the very beginning that when Julian was taken, he had to present himself, obviously, initially, and go into hiding, but he was forced to do that. And then the absolute fiasco of putting him in Belmarsh, it's just unbelievable. And, Beretzer and Aboot not ending civilization with their contempt for our rule of law. George, the list is endless. But would you humour me if I just read out a wee poem I've, written very recently?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I dedicate it actually to the unknown princess because it begins from a small child's perspective of war. So it's named hostage number A9379AY. When I was just a little girl, I dreamed a soldier came to us. Our doorstep saw the resemblance of a man with his gun. He knelt down when he said to me, "Don't run, but fetch your family. I hate to think how they were free before I called their name." Each member stood around the door. Gunman explained to me the score. "Choose one of you to live," he said. "The rest of you must all be dead." When I was only 49, a publisher taken out of time his crime to tell us all the truth of what happens in our name. He asks not monetary reward, so he has billions he can hoard. No sexing up or bloody spin, so why is that a cage he's in? Alone in Belmarsh, forced to stay 23 fucking hours a day. A rapist is all the liars say who took us all to war. Julian gives us all an incredible gift, though he is going round the twist. He's lonely, sad and deeply sore. He must be free. We must do more. The little girl cries in the night. She wakes up to a different plight. The soldier's gone, and in his place a man who changed the human race.
Very, very beautiful, Cora, and I'm grateful to you for delivering it so well. It's not a small thing, what they did to Julian right at the start, and it was the start. The fake rape allegations are what has been used to imprison him, to incarcerate him. He was guilty of nothing except breaking his bail What did he break his bail on? He broke his bail on the fake rape charges because he knew that if he was sent to Sweden, Sweden would pass him on to the United States of America. Any fool ought to have been able to see that. I saw it from the first minute. And of course, since these fake rape charges have facilitated this long agony of Julian Assange, the same fake kind of charges have been visited on all kinds of other people. Whatever happened to the 1 hour special on Russell Brand, for example, which dominated the television network, dominated the front pages for weeks of the main British newspapers? Anyone seen any charges against Russell Brand? No, but they fairly put him out of the game that he was doing very well and very good work on, didn't it? You fools that went along with that. You fools that couldn't see how obvious it was that the US was behind these fake rape allegations in Sweden. The same US that made plans to kill Julian in Knightsbridge if he walked out of the Ecuadorian embassy. You fools that supported and allowed yourselves to be divided on feminist and other issues against a man who's practically a living saint, a living martyr, a man who should be in the pantheon of heroes and instead is emaciated, wasting away, going round the twist, as you put it, in Belmarsh jail. Angry? Moi? Coming up after a short break is a very great man indeed. You may not have seen him before, but once you've seen him, you'll look for him again. I promise you. It's Doc Jazz after this break.
Many people today struggle with the common mainstream media consumer. These types of people are mindless zombies. Instead of living authentically, they feed off masking their true thoughts and feelings, doing nothing and criticizing those who actually do their research. These type of media consumer can be highly manipulative, so here are some golden standard clapbacks when they start with their propaganda. When they say you are too much for them, show them a mirror and tell them to look for less. Draw a diagram of where your business is and their business is, to visually show them they are in the wrong area. When they say, please watch this clip from this reputable BBC journalist, remind them that there are no longer any reputable BBC journalists, and to instead watch the mother of all talk shows for some real journalism. The next time you encounter a brainwashed zombie, hold your head high and know their obsession to eat your brain is masking their jealousy of your confidence, your freedom in self-expression, and most importantly, your authenticity. Keep listening to learn more on the mother of all talk shows.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
More than 25,000 people have now voted in our poll. Should dual citizens serving in the Israeli Defense Force face war crimes charges? Yes or no, simple question. A lot of people now voting. Get your vote in before about 20 minutes to 9. Why don't you? Telephone number, US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. UK and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. Rest of the world, 44 203 966 2625. Doc Jazz is a surgeon, an author, a musician, and an activist. Oh, and by the way, he's also Palestinian. He's got it all. He's the man with the plan. Let's go to him now. Doc, welcome to the mother of all talk shows. I'm a big admirer of yours. We'll talk about your music and so on later, but let's start with the deadly serious stuff. Where do you think the Palestinians are now that nobody's coming to their aid? The Israeli government has made it clear that whatever any court says, whatever any politician says, they're going to continue the slaughter. Where does that leave a people that have been besieged and bloodied for so very long?
Yeah, George, thank you. I'm, by the way, very honored to be on your show. I'm a big fan. I watch twice a week, so it's quite a thing to suddenly be on.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is, of course, a very good question, a very important one, too, because it relates to the effect of that huge surprise that happened on the 7th of October. All these decades, 75 years, it's true that we had our own PLO, we had our own resistance factions. There were several attempts by Palestinians with the diversity of ideologies involved to mount resistance against Israel, but somewhere in the back of everybody's mind, not just the Palestinians themselves, there was always that idea that we need others, we need the Arab world, we need the Muslim world behind us. There was a long time when we were looking in the direction of the Soviet Union for some kind of support, moral support, political support, all that kind of thing. And the special thing about 7th of October is that it is 100% purely Palestinian initiative of resistance, which has shocked the world not only because of its power, it was a very powerful attack, but also because it has shown that when Palestinians do something by themselves, it actually has, gives like almost the kind of like an avalanche effect in the world. And ever since 7th of October until now, it's not only Palestine which has been kept busy with the situation, and for the Palestinians themselves in the most awful way imaginable, but the rest of the world is also in a kind of a panic, and it's pushing the tectonic plates of global politics into frictions with each other, which could explode or ignite things, smaller things, bigger things. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. And that is a very tense situation, which might have effects which reach everyone on the globe.
Now, they're turbocharging the old two-state solution, about which they've done nothing for 30 years. I was a supporter of the Oslo Agreement. President Arafat persuaded me that it was the best that they could get, that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the absence of united Arab world, it was a compromise, to be sure, but it was one that was worth making. And that it would get the Palestinian leaders back to the country, build something. But it turned out all for the birds, really, didn't it? Every inch of the land that was supposed to be the Palestinian part of the two-state equation has been either settled or scorched or ethnically cleansed or otherwise rendered non-viable. So when you hear these Western politicians who won't stop Israel's genocide, but posit, as it were, as an alternative, the two-state solution, how does that make you feel now?
I'm having some technical problems here. I lost your voice, George.
Okay, we'll get back to you and see what we can do to fix them. My question was worth thinking about, I believe. Breaking news right now from the United States. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has tonight suspended his presidential campaign. I wonder what he meant by that, as Talleyrand said when told of the death of an opponent. Have we got Doc back yet?
Okay.
Hello, Doc. How is that now? Can you hear me?
Do you hear me?
No,
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
You can hear me? Okay.
I heard almost all of your...
Did you get my question? Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I heard almost all of your... Yeah, no, I guess that's the only part that I didn't get. I only didn't get your question, but I did get the rest of what you said, most of it. So what was your question towards the end? It was about the two-state solution.
Yeah. How does it make you feel now when you hear coming from the presidencies and chancelleries of Europe, North America, people raising the issue of the two-state solution, about which they've done nothing to impose since it was signed on the White House lawn?
Yes, yeah. Well, first of all, I was never pro the two-state solution. So for me, this has been a very difficult time all the time because I was not happy with what was going on. And the reason for that is that I don't believe that powers voluntarily surrender power, not even a little bit. Powers just don't do that, not in the way that I read history. When you have a situation where you want something from the other one who has control over everything, you have to have a means to exert power onto that other force in order for that other force to surrender something. And because I didn't think that we as Palestinians had that, and we might have had that if we had, like, for instance, superpowers backing us, I really didn't see it happening. So there was not really even 1 minute or 1 day that I thought that this would be a viable idea. Also, I have been reading about Zionism all my life, and I know their quotes, I know their theories, I know that the Jabotinsky brand of Zionism has been in power now for a very, very long time and has actually changed, or if there ever was any milder form of Zionism, which I actually doubt as well, then that is in the past now. It's purely Jabotinsky style, which is Netanyahu, and now even mixed with the, with the religious version of Zionism. It means that you have an adversary, an enemy, who simply wants it all. So for me, this is a part. Like I said, I was very surprised about the 7th of October. It took me by surprise, and I think everyone. But I am not surprised by anything which has happened after that. Even now, Netanyahu rejecting the two-state solution and saying that there will never be one. And the reason for not being surprised about that is because he said it many times before. And I don't know why, when he says that, people still give credence to other things that are happening. And if you look at Israeli politics closely, which I do, then there aren't really things on that level which are surprising. Settlement expansion has always continued. Has it ever stopped? Was it ever halted? Was it ever paused? Land grabs, did they ever stop? They never did. All the things which are moving towards complete domination of what Netanyahu calls the land west of the Jordan, all of that was happening. So this, from my side, the way I see it, that's just an extrapolation of what was already going on. So how does it make me feel? The same way it has been making me feel for the little over 5 decades that I've been alive now. Very angry, very determined also. And we just still have a long struggle ahead. And you know us, you know the Palestinians, we never give up.
No, well, that's definitely true. Do you think the net effect on international support for Palestine, opposition to Israel, has changed the game in any way? I mean, when I started in the Palestine cause, you could have fitted all the supporters of the PLO, like me, into a very small, maybe not a small room, but a small club. But now, everywhere in Britain and everywhere, that support has bloomed, has really expanded dramatically to many millions everywhere, in the Netherlands, in France, Germany, Britain, USA, Canada, everywhere in the Western world. There are millions of supporters of the Palestinian people. Can that change the game?
It could, if those were true democracies. But as I think you probably agree with me, they're not pure democracies. They don't really function in a democratic way. For instance, how can you have a real democracy if you have a media which is not impartial? Impartial media is the foundation of democracy, because people need to have normal and full access to all the information, to have a look at everything separately and say, okay, you know what, this is my opinion and this is my opinion. But if you're being brainwashed and guided and goaded into thinking a certain way, if pure lies are actually allowed on media without fact checking, and in the beginning we might say, oh, well, a mistake was made, something wasn't checked properly and it slipped through, we're sorry, we made a mistake. That is a different era. That's like decades ago. That has never happened since. All these media are owned by conglomerates, and these conglomerates all sing to the same tune. So I do not want to diminish the importance of this huge effect that we've seen now in these past months. I'm even still struggling with it. I'm having a hard time understanding what I'm in now, because I've been so active all these years, and it was always you're trying to call out something and nobody's hearing you. And now you write or you say something and everybody goes, yeah, absolutely. So that is a very confusing thing for myself, and perhaps for other Palestinians as well. But whether that will really result in anything real, well, you know, we can have ideals. The real world still works on geopolitics and geopolitical elements are what decide the outcome of everything. It comes down to your army, your resources, your political friends, your allies. And in that sense, I don't think that the Westerners, the Western public has at this moment a lot of influence on it. But I do think that this situation will wake them up about it, and will say, I mean, because they believed this democracy idea. They believed that this, and you know that I was born and raised in the Netherlands. I lived for 40 years in that democracy. So I know what I'm talking about. I know what I've lived in, and I know how the citizen feels. And I think that this has shaken up more than we can see at this moment. I think that October 2023 was pivotal in many ways, because I think many people have seen masks come off that they didn't even know were masks, didn't even suspect that they were masks. So I think change is coming. And the only thing is that we can't predict how things will coincide, how things will go. For instance, here in the Middle East, the tensions are increasing every day. Nobody can deny it. It's really building up. Everybody's feeling it. Everybody's tense. Everybody's waiting and seeing what's going to happen. And we don't know that when it happens, what that it will be. We can make 5 or 6 possible scenarios, but it's very hard to predict which one will come first, and then what will come next. It's actually, we have the risk of a snowball effect. Things leading to other things which we can't oversee. Also, not forgetting that
and which can be disastrous for all of us, including people who haven't even given a moment's thought to the plight of a small nation called the Palestinians, and yet that may be the trigger for this avalanche of events which may even sweep us all away. You say you were in London. Is that where you started the jazz?
In London.
Where did you say London?
No. Holland. I said Holland, the Netherlands.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Is that where you started the jazz?
Well, that's where I was living for the first 4 decades of my life. So that's where I started everything. So yes, also that's where I started my music, of course.
Where can people see you play? What is it you play?
I play many instruments. I play guitar, piano, drums, and bass, but I also play Arabic instruments like oud and shibabi, which is a Palestinian flute. It's a very traditional thing, which actually is in danger of disappearing. So by playing it, I'm trying to also help keep it alive. I have a YouTube channel. I have a Facebook channel. I think I'm very easy to find. If you just type Doc Jazz, you'll find a lot of things there.
I'll be looking after the show to see you play. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Should dual citizens serving in the IDF face war crimes charges? Let's see what the final result is. I'm afraid it's overwhelming. 96 say yes on Telegram, 90 on Twitter, 91 on the community poll, and 93 on the YouTube stream. I had no idea it would be as overwhelming as that. You've still got 20 minutes maybe to cast your vote on any of those platforms. Here's some important breaking news. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, once tipped as Donald Trump's biggest challenger for the Republican presidential nomination, has suspended his campaign. It comes after Trump won a resounding victory in the Iowa caucuses, with DeSantis only narrowly beating his nearest rival, Nikki Haley. DeSantis made the announcement in a video on the social media platform X, formerly Twitter, on Sunday night, saying, quote, "We left it all out on the field," unquote. He endorsed Donald Trump for president in his announcement. Now just think about that. Trump got 51% of the vote in Iowa, and DeSantis got 21. Add 21 to 51, it's kind of obvious who's going to be the Republican Party's nominee now, unless they rig that as well. Quick break, and then Linda in Orkney and Jesse in Birmingham, all coming up. Stay tuned. I defy anyone to contradict the point that I just made, that every person alive today was born of woman. So why would we say that the people in the labor wards, in the maternity units, are people who are giving birth? Why can't we say women? Why can't we say mothers? Why can't we say women who are breastfeeding, mothers who are breastfeeding? Why do we need to say people who are chest feeding? All of these words, and indeed all of the trend that you say you dissociate yourself from, of transgenderism, transmania, I call it, are all taking rights away from women.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
I see on the news bar there that Alec Baldwin is facing another charge of involuntary manslaughter over the shooting of a fellow a crew member on a film that he was making. Linda is in Orkney on the Birmingham protest. Go ahead, Linda.
Hello, George. I just want to say great respect to you for standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves.
Thank you.
I was nursing for 44 years. I've always stood up for my patients, so good for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Keep going. I was just going to ask you, well, you've actually answered the question regarding the pro-Palestinian protest yesterday in Birmingham. I am from Birmingham area, and we was expecting you to be there and to do which you was, but to do a speech. And I think it was very disappointing that you wasn't there, but you have answered that, and I'm grateful for that. But I have got a couple more questions actually to ask you.
Sure.
Keir Starmer, do you think he's backpedaling now because of the general election? Because he's actually changed his whole stance now, and he's actually criticised Netanyahu, saying that he was wrong to reject a possibility to establish a Palestinian state. Keir Starmer also said that if the Labour Party got in as a government, they will work for a two-state solution. Do we trust him? I don't feel that we can, because we've seen him in the last few months.
Well, let me deal with that, Linda, because there'll only be time for one question because we've got an awful lot of calls, and that was a very good question. I've tuned out of Keir Starmer, so what you said I didn't know. And I wonder what the attitude of his new best friends in the pro-Israel movement will say about any change of tack by him. But I would not buy a second-hand tea bag from Keir Starmer. I really wouldn't. This is a man who I saw with my own eyes speak at a meeting not even 10 years ago, calling for Israel to be kicked out of the Football Association, FIFA. Kick out racism. Kick Israel out of FIFA. I saw him. I was there. And then he turned into Israel's greatest supporter, witch hunting the supporters of his predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn, over the issue of Palestine, and stating that he is unequivocally, that's his word, unequivocally a Zionist. So if he's now saying it's actually there are some equivocations, although I said earlier it was without condition, it is now actually conditional, my support for Israel. If he's now saying that, then why would anyone treat him seriously? This is a man who went on television, went on public platforms, saying that Jeremy Corbyn was the greatest thing since sliced bread and everybody should vote for him. Only then to stab him in the back and describe him in the most lurid and ridiculous negative terms and kick him out of the Labour Party, which he now leads. Who would believe such a man as that? This is a man with more faces than the town clock. This is a man who could not be trusted to tell you the weather outside, which is, by the way, still a tornado where I am. So, Linda, it may have something to do with this. There are elections just round the corner. And at this stage, nobody in their right mind who was a religious believer, especially a Muslim religious believer, would vote for him. After what he's done, none of them, it's more or less at this stage a sin for a Muslim to vote for Keir Starmer. I mean, how would you answer that on the Judgment Day? So that's the reason. If he is tacking back, that's the reason why. And it's great to know we've got viewers in Orkney. If the weather's bad down here, what must it be like in Orkney? Jesse in Birmingham on the Birmingham protest. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hi, George. It was an honour to spend this weekend with you on the march, and yes, some great meetings ahead. I was actually backstage, really trying to pressure the organisers to get you up on the platform. I mean, the just the level of rudeness, the conceitedness. They were saying stuff like Galloway is persona non grata, that Galloway will speak over my dead body. We asked them why. They said, we don't need to justify our position to you. But I've got some very exciting news, and you'll hear it here first as branch secretary of the Workers' Party in Birmingham, that this morning the online reprisals were huge at the organisers for excluding yourself and Chris Williamson from the platform. We've now pressured the organisers to meet with us and to actually discuss, and we have now been invited to the Palestine meetings, to planning meetings, to help coordinate the movement. So this pressure has worked, and we're going to continue fighting your corner, because at the end of the day, if the more they're going to push you out, they're only going to fade themselves into the ether.
That's very interesting news indeed. Of course, pressure works. The fact that well over now, nearly 300,000 people have engaged with my tweet about the issue has obviously unsettled them. But they're a deeply dishonest group, because they told a different story to everybody that they spoke to, depending on what they thought would play best with the person that they were speaking to. But I'll take that good news and turn the page, Jesse, because we don't want to dwell too long on this whilst the Palestinians are being slaughtered. That's the first priority for every right-thinking person. Ceasefire now, and let's get everybody who we can possibly get who will support that demand. Let's get them together in one hand. Jesse in Birmingham, many thanks for that. Anthony Wedgwood, famous name, says Russell Brand was happy to question the narrative on the war in Ukraine. He now seems to be fence-sitting on the genocide in Gaza. I think he knows not to cross that line, or it's over. I don't know if that's right or wrong, Anthony. I don't follow his output, but he definitely did question the narrative on Ukraine and on other things too that brought about his partial downfall, at least. Erobos, our legend in New York City, says, read Doc Jazz, great interview, very knowledgeable. I'll see if I can pick up some guitar lessons from him. Well, him on the guitar, Erobos, you, the Barry White of the mother of all talk shows, with that deep brown voice of yours, we've got the makings of a band. Abdullah is in London on Birmingham. Go ahead, Abdullah.
Hello, Mr. Galloway. First of all, thank you very much for being outspoken voice for Palestinians. I knew you from your meetings with Ahmed Mansour and Al Jazeera. But what I wanted to say is I would understand if these people in Birmingham would have done this with someone who started talking about Palestine only now when it's profitable. But to do it with the Grant, Mr. Galloway, who spoke about Palestine when it actually was costly and cost him a lot, and someone who, despite his other opinions, have done actually something practical to help the Palestinians in Gaza and everywhere. So, solidarity, don't bother with them. Let's, as you said, focus on the genocide that's going on. Exactly. Thank you very much.
God bless you, Abdullah. You're right, of course. Let me take a quick break, and then I'm joined by my good wife, Gayatri. It's a rare day. Thank you. I'll be right back. Thank you. Go ahead.
During your show in the past, you've often mentioned that Donald Trump would be a much better alternative than Biden, although you weren't a big fan of him, etc. And you said that in all likeliness, if he gets in power, he'll be much more appeasing towards Putin. There'll be less likely of the conflict to escalate. But I have to tell you, I'm not so sure about that. Really, I think the only way to solve all this, it doesn't matter if Kenny gets in or anyone else, because there's always going to be, at one stage of our lifetime, two psychotic leaders of the superpowers. Why hasn't anyone in your show or yourself mentioned anything about nuclear disarmament or CND? Surely the only way to save humanity is by nuclear disarmament, and I just wanted to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, of course, but how are you going to get that? I mean, does CND even still exist? They could have been leafleting outside every cinema showing Oppenheimer, but of course they don't have enough people to fill a telephone box. It is the worst example I know of, although the Stop the War Coalition runs it close, of an organization that for its sectarian, internal, political reasons has thrown away its brand. I have not appeared on a Stop the War platform for an entire decade. Not to worry, no to NATO, no to war. Its rival organization attracts exponentially larger numbers of people. They cannot help themselves, these people. These members of leftist groupuscles have it in their DNA that they cannot get along with anybody who isn't exactly like them. And as the number of people who are exactly like them is mercifully tiny, they end up in tiny organizations. So, of course, I'm in favor of the destruction of nuclear weapons. But how are you going to get that? It's a totally utopian slogan to advance at this point in time. I'm just trying to stop the weapons from being used.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, should dual citizens serving in the IDF face war crimes charges? Well, the verdict is in. 26,229 people voted, and it is overwhelmingly on all platforms that yes, they should. Robert Nisbet says, never forget what they did to David Kelly, with the demon mesmerizing his sheep with his visions. The debate on attacking Syria was game-changing and completely ignored on the BBC, etc. Well, I'm unlikely to forget David Kelly. I'm the last person that would forget him. If you haven't seen my film, Killing Kelly, then you'll get it for free if you sign up to my Patreon page, patreon.com/George Galloway. MAG says, independent media is the way to get real, honest, unadulterated news. Amen. And Raplenzi01 says that IDF soldier was invited to give a speech to troubled young Jewish boys, but people in London protested and it was cancelled. And David Davis says, George, I've been contributing to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. In view of their deplatforming you, should I continue? Well, you should certainly keep funding the Palestine cause, and it's up to you how you do that. But you should certainly let them know how upset, unhappy you are. Stay Blessed says, Assange gave his life for us. Like Gaza, we're supposed to feel impotent. Are we going to let him die? And Landrew says, I will be voting no on Genocide Joe. I'll be voting for Jill Stein or Cornel West. And PO12LK3MNB says Trump is the only politician who would be willing to consider a deal. On the line from Lebanon is Yasser. How could I resist? Go ahead, Yasser.
G'day, George. How you going, mate?
All good, brother.
Appreciate what you do, mate. Dearly appreciate what you do. I'm in South Lebanon, by the way, near the border.
Okay. Take care.
Yeah, we're fine here, mate. I just want to know, why can't America and its allies, for some reason, do business with people other than have them bending down on their knees? You know what I mean? Like, why do they have to force themselves on people? You think for 1 minute, if the Zionists don't leave us alone, we won't leave them alone? Just doesn't make sense to me.
I think it's habit, Yasser. They have ruled the roost, the Europeans, and I include the North Americans in that, even though soon the Europeans will be a minority in the United States. But the Europeans have ruled the roost for 500 years. First Portugal, then Spain, then France and Britain and Germany, and then the United States. They have ruled the roost. They have dominated the world. They have subjugated the world and bent it to their will. And it's a habit they have not been able to kick. And they simply cannot come to terms with the new power in the world, the new powers in the world, the leading one of which is, of course, China, which has a completely different approach. It follows the policy of win-win. The West follows the policy of zero-sum game. If I win, you have to lose. Whereas the Chinese approach is, there needs to be something in this for all of us, for both of us, for all the parties in this deal. And that's why people are being attracted to the new pole of China, Russia, Iran, the BRICS, South Africa, Brazil. People are more attracted to that way of doing things for obvious reasons. And now, those at the center of that new world, principally China and Russia, are attracting support from places that they could never have imagined would be turning to them. I was in Abu Dhabi when President Putin arrived, to a welcome that had never been afforded ever before to any Russian leader in the Gulf. It was as clear a signal of how things are changing all over the world as it could possibly be. Now, I'm sorry to leave you, Yasser, but I've got my wife sitting next to me in a studio for the first time, Gayatri, since the government closed down our show in the interest of freedom and liberalism, of course. We used to have a weekly show and we loved it. And I've not been in a studio with you since.
How wonderful
so
is this?
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I can reach out and touch you. You've got the Moat School jacket. I must say that's very
Isn't it
classy,
wonderful?
very fashionable indeed. So what's rattling on the social media?
Well, I know that after your call with Jesse, you said you didn't want to linger on about the subject, but we were obviously in Birmingham yesterday at the demo, and it was a huge demo. It was very good, but the setup was really weird, and lots of comments on it. And I just wanted to read this specific one for a reason. Hey, George, I completely agree that you should have spoken on the march, but still, this should not be something where anyone looks for protagonism. Not saying that you are, but we should stand together no matter the differences. We need to amplify the voices from Gaza and Palestine. Thanks for the show, and thanks for bringing on Doc Jazz, which is wonderful. Free Julian, free Palestine. Regards, Zuzana, who's a Slovakian living in Spain.
A Slovakian in Spain on Palestine, and Birmingham
and Doc
on
Jazz.
the mother
Yes,
of all talk
there you
shows.
go.
And Doc Jazz. This is a global university of the airwaves, for sure.
Now, here is a critique message. Here we go. I have been a weekly financial supporter for years, but I've come to realize that actually you are part of the problem, George. You keep blaming things like politics, religion, and politicians for death and conflict, and that is exactly what the 0.0001% wants. The politicians are the tools. Blaming them is like blaming the mechanic wrench for breaking your car. Until you start leading people to protest $1 billion estates and the $1 billion yachts, nothing will happen. Until folks like you will put the blame where it belongs, on the folks who want private control of currencies, You are just part of the noise the elite want.
Thanks very much.
That's
Go ahead.
Lance.
I'm not even going to. I'm not even going to.
All right, here we go.
Answer that.
Yemen. Did you know that Yemen is an anagram of enemy, which explains the whole UK-US logic?
It is an anagram.
There you go. That's
You're right.
from Stephen
And
Fournier.
Yemen's been our enemy for so long. They must be sick of it. The Yemenis must be really sick of being shot at by British people. A Britain, by the way, that is bankrupt, which can't afford anything that it needs in its own country.
Working trains, for example?
Yeah, trains that will not be turned back at Preston because of the rain.
Yeah. There you go. Tom Orr says, everything that can be said has been said about Palestine. The only thing now is that I hope to live long enough to see the Palestinians free. I hope I live long enough to see a reckoning.
What age is he?
I don't know. Tom Orr, can you let it be known?
Let it be known, and I'll give you a prediction. What I used to say was I would walk in a free Palestine. Now I'm not so sure, but I'm sure that my children will.
Our children will, God willing.
God willing, our children will do so. So that would be the kind of time frame that I'd have in mind. Or let us know what age you are, and I'll give you an actuarial prediction.
This is from Patreon. Stephanie Carroll says, if the ICJ judges still find in favor of Israel after the open disrespect they've been shown by Israel, the UK, the US, France, and Germany, then they will reveal themselves as nothing but neutered shadows who make a mockery of their own positions.
Yeah, not worthy of their wigs. If now that they've been told, if they find Israel guilty, Israel will pay no regard to it, and neither will the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and France.
What?
Well, how much contempt of court can you be guilty of?
Yeah, it's quite.
And so if they now let Israel off the hook, then they're definitely not worthy of their wigs. They're clowns taking up seats that would be better just put away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, people are asking as well, how long do we have to wait for any result?
It'll be this week. We'll get a result. My prediction is Wednesday or Thursday, but it'll be this week.
Big week coming up.
That's what sources in South Africa are telling us.
Great. Okay, great.
That's it.
Well, do you have time for more?
Give me one or two more.
Okay, so this is another patron, the KCWC. In regards to the poll, no, they should be stripped of their British citizenship, just like they did with those who fought with ISIS, which I don't agree with, but let's be consistent.
That's a fair point. What's her name?
Begum.
She got her passport taken off her.
Mm-hmm. So let's be consistent, huh?
Unbelievable. Gayatri, plenty was rattling, even if one of it really got under my skin.
There you go.
The very idea that I don't put the blame on the billionaire class, that I don't identify the capitalist system that we live under as the core problem of our times, is a denial of my life's work. I do nothing except put the blame where it belongs. But the politicians are running the society that they own in their interest. And if we had better politicians, we could do something about it. That's my view. Back to the lines. Babek is in Manchester on Palestine. Go ahead, Babek.
Hello, George. This is an honor, George.
Thank you, brother.
We are living in an era of censorship against truth, and you are in forefront of it. So everybody should be grateful to you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. God bless.
Can I say about just a little thing about my take on Middle East?
Yes, of course. Please do.
Right. I think I've been addicted to news and current affairs since I was a kid. So this is my take. And what do you think? I think Americans been talking to Russians. Is Americans saying to Russians, you can have the Ukraine. They also been talking to Chinese. You can have the Taiwan in one condition. I'm going to pulverize Iran, but you shouldn't interfere. What do you think?
No, I don't believe that they would be involved in such a sordid and dirty deal. I think that Taiwan belongs to China, and is an apple that will fall from the tree sooner or later, hopefully sooner, but later will do. I don't think that China would ever sacrifice the people of Iran in order to secure the return of Taiwan. I don't believe that for 1 minute. I don't believe the Chinese government is that kind of a government. I don't believe the Chinese state is that kind of a state. And I don't believe that Iran will be pulverized. Iran has the power to pulverize back. You know, I always thought one of my best lines was that Iraq is being invaded because it doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. North Korea is not being invaded because it does have weapons of mass destruction. Be sure that Iran has plenty of weapons of mass destruction and many people ready to fire them, and not only from Iran. So any attempt to pulverize Iran will be the biggest boomerang in history. Carlo Biondi says, I can't understand some supporters of a ceasefire in Gaza also support arming Ukraine and defending Taiwan's sovereignty, war hawks in some regions and doves in others. Well, we have to work, Carlo, to point out the error of people's ways. That's what we try to do here. Beta Caliph says, thanks for the best university for truth, justice and humanity. Regarding the Nobel Peace Prize 2024, I have to say both South Africa and Yemen and the Palestinian people should have it. Thank you for that. I Look at News says, I am non-white from South Africa, a teenager in the 80s. Apartheid was never as brutal as in Israel. Marco Sullivan says, hi George, what the hell is occurring in Germany? The ADF party, second in the polls, talking of deportations. Can you educate us? From Mark in Worksop in Nottinghamshire. We will have to deal with Germany nearer the polling time for sure. Last call though, because there's only 3 minutes left, is Danielle from Arizona on Palestine protests. Danielle, it'll be warmer in Arizona than it is here, where there's a tornado blowing and it's below zero. Tell us, cheer us up about Palestine protests in Arizona.
Well, I actually just have a quick question. Do you think an organized bank run for a ceasefire would be effective?
I'd probably be arrested at the door if I called for an organized bank run. I think that there's a case for changing your account from one bank to another. In Britain, for example, and maybe also in the US, Barclays is not uniquely, but especially likely to face that kind of campaign. And many people, I see it on social media, many people are closing their Barclays bank account and transferring their business elsewhere. And that will begin to have its effect on Barclays, as the boycott of McDonald's is turning out to be an extraordinary success. McDonald's has lost probably billions as a result of their early decision to hand out burgers free to an invading army on its way to genocide. It doesn't get much more serious than that. And McDonald's have paid a very high price for that. No self-respecting person will now be seen dead in a McDonald's. And many people have vowed that they will never cross the threshold of McDonald's ever again. And Starbucks at Dublin Airport has changed the name of Starbucks. That is a phenomenal achievement by the Irish people and by the boycott campaign. And Starbucks too must obviously now be regretting the utter stupidity of endorsing by association their company and their coffee with what has since happened in Gaza. And there are many others that are coming under real pressure of boycott. Now, whatever our governments think, we have the right to boycott. No one can legally force us to drink Starbucks and eat McDonald's. And so we should exercise our own free agency and boycott at least the worst offenders. And I've given the names of 3 of them. At least the worst offenders, don't give them your business. And if we all do that, the impact is phenomenal. And it really hurts them. And it sends a message to other companies to distance themselves from the foolish idea that by endorsing genocide, endorsing occupation, endorsing child killing, that you could possibly improve your business. Well, look, time is up. I do have to close the show now, but the tornado permitting, I will be back on Wednesday at the slightly later time of 9 p.m. UK time. We'll definitely examine this Ron DeSantis development, work out what that means for American politics, and everything else on the international and national agenda will be there. See you then, God willing.